Blankenship. And right now, this is a pretty conceptual episode. Give me just a second. I'm trying to do this the super cheap way, get the video up and running. I kind of don't care if people have jumped on at the start because people are going to see this after it isn't live, but that is what I'm trying to do. I was wanting to go ahead and begin by talking about open submissions in comics. Now, don't let the name deceive you, because when you see open submissions, that's like, hey man, this dude's hiring and all that. This is almost like comic book like jargon or something, or whatever you would want to call it in a store or shop. Like a, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Wouldn't it be cool if that happened? Sure. Um, Ideally, you would pitch to Marvel. Ideally, you'd pitch to DC. I know that Scott Snyder had said in a recent little like video audio thing of his, what they're going to be doing on the show, how he's so excited, how he's the person that's putting people over certain books and everything. Super nice guy, by the way. It was great meeting Scott Snyder. Due to, I don't know if it's idiocy or what on my part, but I've got sunburnt before. I've never got sun poisoning, and I got severe burns. Because I said to him and several other people that day, I'm like, "Am I burnt at all?" Because I mean, you can't tell. It's like, "Nah, man, you look cool and everything." The next day, the redness started setting in. 2 days later, I looked like the Elephant Man or the dude off of Goonies. There are pictures online. Thank you, God bless you, everybody that had been praying for me. I was swollen right here, like at the top of my nose, and it like blisters around my eyes, and my eyes were like going shut like that. I looked rough. What everybody said is that it looked like Victoria had punched me in the face. I don't know if she can punch that hard. I don't really ever want to find out. Victoria is sweet and sunshine, and Rose is my wife, Queen Victoria, and that's never happened. We've never come to blows, and if she did hit that hard, I certainly wouldn't want her to hit me. But yeah, I tell her she's just good for petting. Anyway, I've written for a decent while. In 1999, that's when I began my ministry. I'm wondering if this is even working. Yeah, okay, there it is. I began my ministry, called to preach at the age of 7. Uh, I ran from it until the age of 14. Hang on. I'm trying to do this stuff. I ran from it until the age of 14, when I finally got up and professed it. I am going somewhere with this. I prepared, felt totally inadequate. Preached my first sermon a week before my 18th birthday. It went horribly, by the way. It was like 5 minutes. I got up and I read the verse, marriage is honorable, the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God shall judge. If you knew how the young people and everything were doing, you would say that that showed an incredible amount of integrity, that the young Ben Blankenship was just blasting them all to hell. The choir and people, not just people like out in the pews, like there's a different standard, everybody, for being up front or whatnot. But yeah, anyway, it was just kind of like, good night, everybody. So it went like that. Anyway, the reason that I say this is in the same year, in 1999, when I started preaching. That's the year I turned 18. I was born in late April, in 81. So my uncle passed away, and he always had a gift to write songs. And of course, I quoted, some Bible stuff, talking to the Lord, about the talents that Jesus talked about, how the master had given out, and the one that was faithful with the little would be given more. And I said, God, if you give me that talent, that ability to write songs, I will do that, and I will give that to you. Now, there have been a lot of hard, rough things in my ministry. Through the years. That's been a minute. Again, in 1999, like soul wounds, bad, rough stuff in church. And while there's been things that I haven't been able to control, I'm the kind of person that you'll really see me going and pushing on the things that I can. Right now, for example, I'm writing some comic books. Are they going to be fantastic. Absolutely, yeah, but that's subjective, right? Either you're interested or you're not interested. If you're interested, don't just click like and stuff. Buy the stuff. It would be wonderful if I made bukus of money. Y'all know that I'm a dude that like feeds the poor, does all kinds of stuff. I don't get up and talk about that and all that. You know what I believe by the way that I live my life, not by what I say. There's people that say I love you all the time, and you think, well, act like it then, jerk. I try to treat people well. I try to treat people the same way that I would want to be treated. I try to, uh, live the things that Jesus Christ preached. Is that if somebody compels you to go 1 mile to go two and all that, I really, really notably bend over backwards for people, overly kind to the point that I mean it should be jarring. It's like, how are people so ugly to this dude? I don't know. There's a lot of people, a lot of different stuff. I don't even know that people know how to take me. Whatever, I don't care. Yeah, somebody's smiling watching this, or somebody shaking their head. It doesn't matter. Um, anyway, so in all that music stuff, there's been a lot of things that have happened, and I don't get like all overly excited over stuff because I've had so many close calls, right? I mean, you hear like EMI that they've got an artist that's like an up and coming country singer that wants to pick up God Bless the SEC, like a song that was on our first album that people still talk about how it is just like, wow. If you love, that's like the spirit of Rob Liefeld just took control, even though he's woe. Like Joey Lawrence, but without the raised voice. But people still talk about that song. If you love college football, Southeastern Conference, that's what SEC is, and Jesus Christ, that is totally the song for you. You know how this country stuff goes, though. I mean, it's kind of got one foot in the church and one foot in the world. Not that I'm saying that all the synchronism and different things is okay, but you know what I mean. I'm talking kind of all that. Anyway, so it was just like a fun song that we did on a gospel album, and that's one of the songs that people clung to. Even though I did a lot of songs, in fact, notably, the absolute best gospel group in the history of the world, according to some, that to drive to. I know that the world's all messed up now. They're getting away from CD players and all that. The reason for that is because a lot of my songs are mid-tempo with like a good bass beat and all that, and that's what keeps it jivey and keeps it going, and I understand that. I would intentionally do things that I felt like other artists were failing abysmally to do. Not enough fast songs. Why are you listening to music when you're driving? To stay awake. I have been accused of having albums that have made people exceed the speed limit, which says that I'm doing exactly what I intended to do. Another thing that I would do is I would put at least one tearjerker pretty much on most every album. The reason for that, and this is my feeling here, and there's somebody that's not going to like this, but this is my feeling. There's something wrong with people that don't like sad songs. I feel like when I listen to a song, I want to feel something happy, sad, mad, whatever. I don't just want to feel numb. And I like sad, tearjerker, love songs and all kinds of stuff. When you're talking about gospel music and when you're talking about sad songs, even though the Bible says you should be rejoicing when somebody like dies and goes to heaven or whatever, you're typically talking about the passing of a loved one. It's songs like that, and I've did a number of different somebody dying songs. In fact, I did a somebody dying and going straight to hell song in amidst those. Why is it escaping me what that's? So I heard You're a Christian is the name of that one. It's about a person that dies and goes to hell, and anybody with any kind of anything in their head that knows the life of this dude knows they weren't saved, they didn't have a relationship with Jesus Christ, whatever at all. And the preacher's up there talking about them like they're somebody other than what they were. That's what that song's about. I've eulogized a bunch of people. There's some funerals that are way harder than others. I'm not gonna go all into that, but that's the context of that song. People that write Southern gospel songs, Christian country songs and all that, a category that you could put them into. is storyteller. It's not like the contemporary Christian music, which let's just keep singing a chorus over and over. They call them 7 and 11. It's seven words or 7 lines or whatever, 11, and back and forth, whatever. That's some kind of phrasing that people use. It's story songs. I have been compared to John, what's his name, Lennon, Bob Dylan, all those, Johnny Cash, all those people. Um, I put off the vibe, whatever. I write songs that are kind of in that, but they're Jesus-y, all that kind of stuff. Not that all of John Lennon's songs were good, but then there's a bunch of mine that have never seen the light of day, because I'd look at them and I'd be like, man, I'm not gonna do this. So if I wrote Octopus Garden, it wouldn't have come out, because there's some Beatles songs that are just, they're not good in and of themselves, but the way the presentation of them, they just sounded so with it that's what made the song. Same thing with Nirvana, though. I mean, like, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Lyrically, the song is trash, and you'd be an idiot to think otherwise. But it's the presentation. You can't even understand the words. People like it because of the music and them going wild and busting drums apart and kicking out speakers and all that on stage. So people don't say, man, I like that for the lyrics. They say, I like that for the sound and all that. Lyrics is central to all of that. Words are central to writing, right? So I was in a band and all that, and this is just a big build up and all, because I said I was talking about comics, but I'm just taking you to the journey, right? And had all of that going. Stayed quite busy. I would book ourselves up at churches. I would be over music stages. If you want somebody that gets stuff done, you go and you get a go getter. I'm a go getter. I go get it while other people are talking about getting it. While other people want to sit around and practice, I just get up and do it. Right? That's the way that I am. How'd you learn to do graphic art? By doing it. How did I learn to do just pretty much anything that I did? By doing it, by application, over and over and over and over. So it's not, hey, I wrote a book and I went to school and all that, even though I have read books, even though I have did schooling stuff and all that stuff. But how has this got to here? By doing it, and doing it poorly for a while until I got better at doing it. But anyway, so I was pastoring a church 7.5 years, several years into that. And I mean, it had really died down, like the music stuff that was going on. But, that's like still wanting to get a few things out and all that. And my wife's just an incredible singer. I mean, like, she could be in Nashville, like Nashville quality stuff. Like, you can listen to it online, Spotify. Ben Jam, all capitals, asterisk in between. BEN asterisk JM. Listen to it, like some of the newer stuff. And you'll hear Victoria singing there. Wonderful. At some point, I'm like, you know what? This has to go down so I can focus more on the church. And I was really broken by a lot of the things in the church. Now, if you look at churches and you look at churches that, and again, this has to do with like being a go-getter, that you're getting up and you're getting it right. Churches that have a bunch of revivals, churches that have a bunch of singings, churches that are doing those things, it's because they want to. It's because the pastor wants to. It's because they have a heart to do all of those things. They don't do it because they don't want to. There's other reasons for that too. But that's totally me. I'm such a music-y guy, right? And so always having something for people to go to. This church should be growing and doing stuff, going out into the community, talking to people, walking through the hospitals, praying for people that want it in their rooms, offering, hey, can I pray for you? Having, like, we had like 6 or 8 people that went and did that, doing all kinds of stuff like that. That is Benjamin Blankenship, Beal Blankenship, Ben Jam, all that. That's me. All that stuff, burning my candle at both ends. People would come into the church, not come back, come for a little while, not come back, come, then just like lay out, and they're there once in a blue moon, but they'll say, I go to that church, right? I got a place that was sitting empty for 1 year. So not an ideal situation. So you're trying to bring something back from the dead. People say so-and-so still going there, so they think that it's always been going. They're that oblivious to it. Other people are like, is that even a church? I didn't even know that there was a church there. all kinds of stuff. We had somebody do a burnout in a parking lot, like drag racing, all kinds of stuff like that. Had our own magazine thing, Mountain Preacher magazine, going for a while and everything. It's online. You can read it on my Behance page and all that. I laid the whole thing out, meticulously went through the store. There's some editorial mistakes, by the way, but meticulously went through the store and looked at other magazines so it could look as visually good as, like, just. So am I fabulous at that? Absolutely, incredibly, but don't ever proofread your own stuff. That's the problem. I can proofread somebody else's stuff and I'll find mistakes right and left, but if I proofread my own stuff, I'll read what it's supposed to say instead of what it says. Okay, so anyway, I felt led of the Holy Spirit to write my first book during my pastorate. So it was in 2019. So I got this church in 2015. That's so me and Victoria got married too. So started pastoring. Technically, it was before that, but technically it wasn't. There was somebody there that didn't believe in running the heat in the winter. Idiots in charge, poor stewards that'll be judged by God. Whatever. Water pipes busted, all kinds of stupid stuff. I'm one of those people that anything that I touch, I leave it in better shape than it was before I had it. I'm one of those people. I'm that person. I'm very cleanly. I'm into being cleanly. I don't like nasty. I don't like inhygienic. I'm that way, right? So went ahead and had to fix up a bunch of stuff for a couple months, and then in January of 2015. We opened up, had our first service. I had said to the Lord, I said, I'm going to give it 1 year. And then if you've not done something, I'm going to leave. And then I get like a guilty conscience, right? And I think, what if God's going to do it in 2? You get the pattern, because I said I was there for 7.5 years, right? So essentially, I'm just like there murdering myself. Anyway. So in 2019, I felt led to write this book, a theological masterwork, by the way. Thank God for women preachers. You can pick it up on Amazon. I'm never going to make as much money off of that as I spent having it published. I had it published through a vanity press that, it set me back a pretty penny. That hurts you. Right there. I published through a lot of online publishers, both digital, print on demand, physical. Had my stuff published through other publishers since, which is more or less the same medium that I would do it through. We're not talking about a huge Penguin Random House thing. We're talking about small press stuff. But yeah, so I put that out. Thank God for women preachers. And it talks about women in ministry from the Bible. So what you have is you've got a lot of people that cherry pick scriptures, and you've got goldfish brain is what I call it. So you're talking about something and somebody can't even pick out these things that might implicate that what you're saying holds water. Just like I did. Who's Deborah? What do you mean that Moses's wife circumcised her child? And just on and on, and Priscilla and Aquila, and all this stuff, and Junia being an apostle, and just when you really go into the look at all of the documents that you had that were in Greek, and that absolutely zero were named Junia. So yeah, it was a female, and all that, and just all kinds of stuff. But I go into what the Apostle Paul says, the problematic things that you had in the churches that certain letters were used for, that people want to distort and take out of context what Paul's writing. Church history, how Jesus dealt with women in ministry, Second Temple period stuff about female rabbis, all kinds of different stuff. If God has a calling on your life, if God really has a calling on your life, are you going to please men, or are you going to please God? I wrote that. I wrote a few other leadership or theological type things, small. My redneck mama says 30-day devotional, and what is it, mentality to lead, and well done ? And what is the other? There's a subtext to that, but it's, it's about, am I really, doing well? Come on board with a few other people for those. Very nice. Touched some people's lives. I've had people telling me how blessed they were from different things. Females in ministry from Thank God for Women Preachers. That makes it worth it to me. Even though I had like some male chauvinists go totally berserk, and some other guys read it and they're like, everything that he said, I mean, like brilliant, everything that he said. It was the Holy Ghost, y'all. I mean, I read that, and I mean, it's like, this is like the hand of God was guiding my hand. This isn't even like it's a me. It's like so over the top good. It's like, was I in a fugue state? I mean, I wasn't. I was really studying and everything, but I mean, there's like an anointing on that book. So I go from there, and I had the bug bit me, the writing bug bit me, right? Um, I'd never written a book before that, and you write your first like novel length or novella or whatever. I haven't counted the word count on that book, and then a few after, and then you sit down to like write a novel, and so when I was a little boy, and this is just writing experience, and this is a huge buildup, by the way, or whatever. So just like, well, he shut up or whatever. You can comment what you want to comment. Hopefully, you find me entertaining. When I was like a little boy, not popular. I'm a total Sigma male, high level empath, all that type of thing, and people contribute heavily to making you that way. I've always been the one in lead. I've always been the one in charge. I've never been a follower person. I've always been a visionary type person and everything, right? But I've been the kid that was sitting alone, right? And it's when you're sitting alone there at the lunch table in the schoolroom, and you're mad and you're sad and you've got somebody bullying you or whatever, that you channel your sadness and your rage and whatever into art and poetry, right? So that was me growing up, and I wrote poems before I wrote songs, and had a few published in like some vanity presses and things like that. They were fairly good. But anyway, so when I began writing fiction, I'm this way. I don't like being put in a box, right? And people do that. People do that because they lack the capacity to see what you have the capacity to see, right? Um, I don't know how Stephen King can even write these books the way that he does. I do, and it's not because he's some freak in a sewer or whatever. It's that you've got a mindset where you can process this and you can put a story and craft that together, or you don't. And, you hear people say that and they just act like this thing's so impossible. And it's like, well, I'll show you that I can do it. So I began writing Western horror. I thought how people bounce all over the place. And this is what I was doing initially when I was writing fiction, right? How people bounce all over the place, how there's a complete like instability to it. And I thought, what if I just beat one drum for a while, anyway, kind of build something up. And it did. If I beat one drum for a while, okay? So Western horror is a subsect of Weird West, which is a subgenre of Westerns, right? So we're talking more like in the splatter Western kind of region, and everything, Western horror, splatter Western, whatever. You get that because mine were like so violent and everything. But so you would take a genre which is extraordinarily broad. When you say horror, that can mean so many things. Now you'll get some like super churchy person that just doesn't have their head on in a certain mode, or maybe they do, but I mean, they'll get some imagery that it ain't. There's a lot of stuff that you could read in the Bible that's flat out horror, right? And there's, so it goes a bunch of different ways. I would deal with the supernatural, and I would deal with human monsters, true crime, human violence, that type of thing. So it's either demonic, or it's how terrible people are to each other. So I would write these books, book after book after book, right? And then I got brought on as a special guest at this event that was down here in Tennessee, and it was like a sci-fi thing. Super nice people, by the way. The whole horror community was absolutely wonderful to me. The sci-fi community, it's its own animal, but they were very nice too. But they're their own animal. Do I prefer the horror community over the sci-fi community? From my own personal experience so far, yeah. That may not be all inclusive to everybody in every event or whatever, but just from what I've taken, even though that festival and the people over it were great, but like stylistically or whatnot, there's some real friendly people in the horror thing. It almost feels churchy. It's weird, but anyway, uh, I would go ahead and I would like write those things, and then I got brought into that, and I thought, well, I don't really have anything sci-fi, and that's when I wrote Abraham Lincoln Burns in Hell, Volume 1 through 3. They're all serials. They're written like a bunch of journal entries and newspaper clippings and things like that. That's absolutely brilliant, BL. Where did you get that idea? Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's that's how that's laid out. I thought that's totally different than anything, any way that I do anything. So I'm pastiching, the styles of all of these different things when I'm doing that. So I went ahead and I did that, and a lot of people thought it was hip and fun and cool. That's about John Wilkes Booth, who is the hero to a certain dimension, right? And he has to travel through dimensions, kind of like he's Doctor Who, kind of like the Sliders or whatever, with one objective: kill Abraham Lincoln. And every single story, but it's a different like multiverse world that he goes to every time. So there's always some twist. So I would play off different things about like real life things about Abraham Lincoln. It's like I'm going to exaggerate this part of him and exaggerate that part of him and be like, what if these things happened? And what if these things happened? And that's why this is a steampunk world, and that's why this is this kind of world, and that's why that's that kind of world, and all that. I've got him over a papal state for one, because the Roman Catholic Church intervenes in the war of the North and the South in that universe, and all kinds of stuff, right? Also, he doesn't like appear through a portal. He appears through a plume of smoke, exactly like the Wicked Witch of the West and the Wizard of Oz, because I thought that is so much cooler and more steampunk, for the big flame and the plume of smoke, and then there he is in this new world. So Quantum Leap-esque, but that's what it is. I put out I don't know if it's a children's book. It's a storybook. It's a very Dr. Seuss-esque storybook, very much a Tim Burton-esque storybook. It's a type of thing that they could sell at Hot Topic, called Chronicles of the Velveteen Preacher. Now I only have one of those out. I thought, let me see how that'll go. And here's the deal: I sell things like in person when I'm at events. When I'm like set up at stuff, I will outsell all the booths around me. Typically, just sell like wild, and it's because I'm engaging, and because people are physically there, and because they can flip through them, and because it's like, wow, this is the best cover art I've ever seen in my life, and people are going around saying, have you read his stuff? It's yeah, but online, it's not that way. Online, it's much harder, right? I'm very clear about books. I will say, like, if you're offended by anything, don't read this book. Or I'll say, if something's just totally clean or whatever, go ahead. I think that people don't want to be surprised in that sort of way, right? So then, one of the last books that I wrote, if not the last book that I wrote that's been published, I do have some stuff that's not out yet, and that's going to come out just for the sake of being done, and coming out, and for all the fans and everything out there. And there's a lot more to it. But Holy Ghost Exorcist. And I want you to listen to me, okay? And you can do what you want to do, because you can like what you like, and you can not like what you don't like, okay? Holy Ghost Exorcist is a novel. It is my absolute favorite fictional book that I've ever written. It feels 100% real. It feels 100% sincere. It is outrageously Southern Gothic. After reading Flannery O'Connor's The Violent Buried Away, which is an extraordinary book that hasn't been made into a movie, shame on you, but if anybody wasn't going to adapt it right, it's better that they didn't do it. Holy Ghost Exorcist is about a very humble, sincere Georgia pastor. He's bivocational. He sells shoes on commission. That the Lord calls him into deliverance ministry. So, he's casting out devils and stuff in the midst of this real things, and not handled in a way that people handle it, that spectacularize certain things or don't know what they're talking about. So he gets called into that, and the greatest opposition that he has are by somebody that doesn't understand thinking of who it wouldn't be. It's by other church people. It's by these other ministers, right? Obviously, that makes sense because that is 100% how it goes. That was Jesus's opposition, was religious, puffed up, individuals. He's still in our thunder or whatever. So you get this sincere guy, and he's doing all this stuff for the Lord, and all these things happen. Overwhelming amounts of it are taken from real ministries, from real exorcisms, from real life accounts, from real people that I've personally known, from real church services, from real historical things, and it's woven together perfectly into this fictional story. It would make a phenomenal movie. If this was made into a movie and if it was truly adapted, it would likely be like one of my top 5 movies of all time. I would have to watch it to know. I mean, phenomenal. So good that it would be shocking for someone not to be like, wow, regardless of what your thoughts were and whatever. It's my favorite for a reason, right? It would make a great streaming series. It's a drama. There's this bigwig preacher that's in it, and he doesn't believe in that. Once you're saved, Jesus takes care of all. Even though we have evidence, like literally now and scripturally that it's if you're seeing something different than you believe, then maybe you're not reading the text right. So there's this preacher that, I believe that, don't believe in that and all that. And his wife is demonized in it. And he won't let this preacher pray for her. He keeps her oppressed. He's a total male chauvinist. He's a controlling person. I thought that it would be interesting because this has happened in cases, maybe not specifically with this medical diagnosis, but it has happened that there have been people that were demonized, and they've actually screamed out at Bob Larson specifically, you fool, I have a diagnosis for the, I've been medically diagnosed and all that. And I thought, that would be a really good twisty thing. And you kind of saw that in that one movie with the taking of whatever her name was, with that one woman that does she have dementia or is she demonized? There's a exorcism. No, it's not it's like a devilly type of fake documentary movie like that. What I had the woman diagnosed with was Lou Gehrig's disease, and the reason for that is because expressively, outwardly, the person's either mirthful, they're kind of smiling and happy, or they're in pain. And I thought how well that real life medical condition, right, could be misappropriated to someone that is demonized. I thought how well that would be for someone that had a devil in them for the sake of storytelling and drama. That somebody that was being tormented, that it would show through, and that the devil would laugh and have like a little glint in its eye. And so I have that going on too. it ends poorly for her. I'll say that. I'm not gonna go on with the rest. But no, there's a lot of stuff in there. That's taken from real life and all that. Anyway, Holy Ghost Exorcist, I like it enough that it's going to be a mini comic in the reverse side of my extremely mature audience, wildly violent 1974, Youngstown, Ohio series Hellfire. It's going to be on the flip side of two of those. Some Holy Ghost Exorcist stuff is. So I am tying my literary universes, the Western horror and the Holy Ghost Exorcist and all that, which together, and it's coming together in that comic book world. So you do get to see a little bit more of Jackie and Penny Noble. Penny is his wife, and the things that they're doing after the events of the novel Holy Ghost Exorcist, which takes place in 1972. Okay. I got into writing comics after I was writing prose books. So in 2024, this is how fast I move. There's a lot. Look them up on Amazon, and a lot of short stories, a lot of anthologies, all kinds of things, everything. I went ahead. I had 5 different books that came out that year. One of them had to get pulled because trademark, right? 5 books came out in 2024. So I'm a guy that if you want something to get done and you want it to get done fast and relatively well, you would have me do it. And writing doesn't take as long as the art process. That's another conversation, because they've had things where certain comic publishers, DC, Marvel, whoever, where they tried to push writers for a while. And the way that makes sense to push writers over artists is that as a writer, you can crank out a lot more. And if people are following somebody because they're following a writer that, man, this is just really good story, and you just pair them up with these competent artists, that they're going to get more bang for their buck, because it's going to be more stuff. Bam, 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 bam. You'll get fewer things from the artist just based on the amount of time that it takes to draw versus write like a 20-page comic book script, story, full on out, right? So I went ahead and I made several books. They one of them was the Western horror thing. That was Zorro Kills Phuket Mama #1. Phuket Mama #1 is going to be reprinted on the flip side of Hellfire Annual #1. That ties in with my God Walks the Dark Hills universe thing, and it almost touches on like some manga anime type notes and everything there. Obviously it's in Thailand, Siam, by it was the Kingdom of Siam at that time, by the name of the book, the character, because that's where Phuket or Jung Sailan is at. So anyway, so I went ahead, I did these books. The other ones were primarily like humor, and I did some other ones that are like humor that are coming out. The big pitch that I have outside of any of like the funny book stuff, like, and we're talking like Mad Magazine, Adult Swim, whatever type stuff, is my Hellfire series. That is my push. It's either going to rise like the mighty phoenix, or it's going to go up in flames. For it to be a success, one of several things would happen. One, I would make money off of it, like enough money to substantiate like doing it, and like I'm actually making money, because realistically, if it just like made enough for me to get the next ones done, I would do it out of a matter of principle just to get it done, because that's the way that I am. There's not going to be a reset on this. This isn't like Marvel, like, hey man, because we're going to turn around and sell the #1s. Now, if you have any kind of cognizance about manga and comics and all that, you're saying binge jam, man, BL, whatever, that is great, because that's why Chainsaw Man #1 still sells and makes so much money, because there is only one jumping on point, which makes that book eternally something else. So it's a different way of thinking than let's restart it again. Let's restart it again. Let's restart it again. I don't like what the last writer did, so forget what they just went ahead and did, right? It's another animal completely. I totally think that you should respect like the other writers if you're doing something like that or whatnot. It's an IP. But Hellfire 1 through 5 and Annual #1, with on the reverse side being Small Dog 1 through 3, Holy Ghost Exorcist 1 through 2, and Phuket Mama #1. On the flip side of those, short prose stories in between. That is a big pitch of mine. The humor books that will be coming out. I've got one that's Whitechapel #1. See what happens with that. That is Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper. Great artist that I had, Elvin, work with me on that. You have Star Creep #1 and 2. Dave Dinsmore still working on #2 of that. Those are going to come out. It is outer space shenanigans. It's humor. It's quirky. It's dark humor. All that type of stuff. Any of those books, if you're offended by anything, don't get them. I will tell you, the Holy Ghost Exorcist could not be any cleaner. He could not be any more of like a white hat, kind of guy. But other people in the world and the world around him and everything, that allows contrast, by the way. When you have a character like that, Shazam's kind of that way a little bit. That allows contrast when you have a character that's that good. Essentially Jesus walks into the room that's that good. It creates contrast. It's like the light when it shines on your windshield that you thought was clean, but it had the crud on it. It exposes all the other stuff. Contrastually, that's a word, uh, because it's such a good guy character. So that's the way that he is. I don't care to throw some stuff out there before I get into my open submission thing, right? Hellfire, preacher, 20 years old, murdered, horribly murdered, resurrects. He passes back through the veil, comes back like his divine vengeance. So he's kind of got like a divine vengeance destroying angel kind of thing. He's going after the people tied to his murder. There's other stuff. There's more depth to it, a lot more, good storytelling. It's all in the delivery and everything like that. But in a nutshell, that's what he is. Small Dog. Small Dog is a plot device more than a lot of other stuff. He is an egotistical racist cop, but he's a plot device more than anything else. Honestly, props to Todd McFarlane. If you know Spawn, you know you know what I'm thinking of. But they've got some police officers and all that. To DC, Harvey Bullock. The Sandman also has a police officer, which, by the way, he's racist. I'm speaking of Wesley Dodds, not the Dream, but I thought there needs to be a cop in this that does side jobs for the mob, that thinks he's Dirty Harry. So that's basically who Small Dog is. There's some interesting things that happen with him, but yeah, you get to see a bit about his character, and he's a good character, even though there's people that will read it that will say, I hate Small Dog. What, as a person, whatever, but I mean, as a character, he adds a good dynamic to all of that. Anyway, the open submissions thing that I was talking about, just a second. My cup runneth over. The open submissions thing that I was talking about was like, you read how to do submissions and all this stuff, and this almost goes into like comic book, like, I don't know, shop talk. Like, here's what I think would be cool to do. And I just wondered if people would be about hearing stuff like that, besides the Zorro comic, which Zorro Inc. was super nice to me and expressed interest in me writing a prose Zorro story. Right now I'm really trying to focus on the comic, so I stepped back from that. That was really my answer. I didn't say, yeah, I have like soul wounds, or have had. I don't know. It's a lot of trauma from pastoring that church for 7.5 years and everything. But I wrote the Zorro that I wanted to write. I even left it open that there's more people that are dressing up like this masked Avenger. The things that I wrote, if you were really, really with it, I mean, you're not just some flaky person that doesn't know anything about it. You're really, really with it. You would say this guy, B.L. Blankenship, does not only know about American history profoundly during that era, but you would also say he has actually studied up on Zorro, particularly the people that Zorro was based off of, and implemented a lot of that and proto Batman stuff into Zorro Kills #1, into that character, into that story. Yes, absolutely. Um, Really and truly, if I could just, if all the copyright and trademark and all didn't exist, if these were just like selling like crazy, at no point do I show him unmasked. At no point do I show the dude, and say who this guy is when he's not Zorro, allegedly. um but I mean, if I could do what I wanted to do, I would keep it that way. I would show that there were other people that were doing that. And technically, if you were to look at it, and if you really, really knew Zorro, there's somebody out there that you've been called a weirdo because you really know Zorro better than anybody. You would say this character that Beale Blankenship is did not only rocks the snot out of everything that he said, but that technically he's kind of like the eagle. You'd have to know about the Disney Zorro thing to know who that is. That's like Punisher Zorro. That's like Negaduck. Uh, Zorro, but yeah. So yeah, he is the Zorro that kills people. That he just mow them down with a Gatling gun or whatever. He's a Zorro villain that's like dresses like Zorro or whatever. Not that he's never like right about stuff, but he's very anti-hero vigilante. He's the Punisher or something. I don't know, man. Um, but yeah, you've got that. I wrote a Batman thing, not for DC per se. I just went ahead and wrote it for fun and thought, let's have a comic jam. This went on like about 2 years ago. I have several pages from a few different artists. Right, here's the thing that you need to know about this. All these people, they lined up like the little red hen. They lined up and they're like, I absolutely want to do this. I live and breathe to do this. Just tell me the deadline. I'm like, just go ahead and get it done. Just tell me the deadline. Just go ahead and get it done. Just tell me. I'm like, I'm so chill. Just go ahead. Let's just take like a year or what. You just take all the time that you need, right? And the overwhelming majority of these people, artists that want to get into comics and all that, showed me that they weren't going to send me jack after they said that they were going to do this, right? Two people, count them two, went ahead and sent me pages for that story. Why is that important, BL? Because I've hired those people to do other work because they're competent. Not just that they can do stuff, but they will actually get it done, which matters. If you're a publisher, you don't want somebody who can't make deadlines, who can't do that. That's a great test, by the way. Just have somebody that don't matter do a comic jam and say how many people actually showed up that said they would show up. Hey, I'm your friend, but are they? If you're broke down on the side of the road, are they going to come and are they going to show up? Because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. And so those people have did that. I'm not saying that it's equated into like huge amounts of money, but it's I paid them. I've paid them. I'd have to think about it, but it's a bit, because it's a bunch. Shoot, the interior artist that I have for all the Hellfire stuff and everything, Andrea, he was one of those people. One of the cover artists that I've got who has went ahead and Galarmy, is that how you say that? That's went ahead and did stuff. I've went ahead and I've had he did a pay. It looked amazing too. Victor Zaz and everything, and the young Harley Quinzel were on it. The body, the posing of Zaz, where he had like the knife like flipped out and kind of had his hand out, looked extraordinary, right? but I hired him to do some cover art and things for that because of that. So there you have it. That Batman story, by the way, I called it Bat Country Zero. Is a good story. And just like I told you how I am with writing songs, how the things that people wouldn't do, maybe because it doesn't sell, but because that they would fail abysmally to do, like they wouldn't have enough fast songs on an album, they wouldn't have a tearjerker on an album, and it's like I'm gonna do all the things that these people fail miserably to do. I'm gonna pick up the ball that they dropped, and I don't care if they like it or not, whatever. That Bat Country Zero, essentially, I thought about Harley Quinn. I thought about how Harley Quinn is such a popular character. And I began to look into her origin story. And I don't want to be mean or I don't want to be ugly, right? But all writers don't write as well as other writers, and I've not read these things. I've just heard people spell them out how they came on. But here's the deal with Harley Quinn, right? Harley Quinzel. So everybody knows she appeared in Batman the Animated Series. I guess everybody knows that. That was her first real entry, right? And she was a psychologist at Arkham, and she met the Joker, and she became so over the top, overwhelmingly dependent, obsessed, fixated on the Joker, of all people, that they were like inseparable. She was the abused girlfriend that would just keep taking the abuse and taking the abuse and taking the abuse. And I thought, as somebody who has this kind of like mindset and studied and whatever in psychology, not just criminology too, as far as I guess, but in all of the psychology stuff, I thought so many of these stories that people have put out there, and I'm talking to you, DC. I hope DC people are listening to this. I hope this is getting clipped, whatever. So many stories in DC Comics, to my understanding, with Harley Quinn, how she became totally fixated on the Joker, this person that got into psychology, all that, and turned into what she was. They seem like lazy, worthless, incompetent writing. They seem like the kind of writing that would hurt sales for books because it sucks, right? And I know that you've got people that have this mental thing that they don't want a woman to get. This isn't monetized. I don't care. Sexually assaulted, in any kind of story or whatever. But I thought, do you know what would make Harley Quinzel, like realistically, not like somebody that's a loser that can't write and afraid to write certain things? Do you know what would make Harley Quinzel obsessed with the Joker, fixated with the Joker? Harley Quinzel, in canon, was a girl whose daddy tried to trade her away for, what was it, a bottle of beer, a six pack, whatever, of beer, to like her uncle or whatnot. I thought, what if you had all this childhood drama and you had this guy that took this little girl and he did some of the worst things that he could do to this girl, and she's suffering with all this, she's really acting out. They have her go to a Catholic school and all that. That's canon. The Catholic school stuff is, she hits like one of the nuns or whatnot. In some sense it's lazy, but if you have this kid with these severe problems, why does she have such severe problems? Well, not just because of how her daddy did her, but perpetuate giving her to an abuser, right? And so you have this guy, and he's abused her, and he's tried to beat her down, and all this stuff's happened, and she just wants to be a better person and to live a normal life and all that. And you have her as an intern in Arkham Asylum. This is the story that this book essentially tells. Like, and I mean, I do it in what, like 22 pages, as a setup. Do the good start for it, and would have added several more. Like if DC said, let's do this, I will make this happen. I will. You tell Scott Snyder, or you tell whoever it is right now that Bill Blankenship will make this happen. Whatever. I'm not going to hold my breath. But anyway, I thought realistically and honestly, DC could do whatever they take a notion to because they have so many multiverse things. They'll just say, well, that's not canon, that's this way or that's that way. So if this does it for you, here you go, and all that. So I mean, you can have Harley Quinn and Batman and whoever having like an infinite amount of background stories because they don't really have like just one track. They go all over the place and say multiverse or whatever. But in the B.L. Blankenship universe, which quite honestly would pair well with the Batman movies. It's like that level of dark, like Seven, you know, it'd work. Anyway, I thought if all of that stuff was happening and she's an intern and all that, and Joker, even though he's got the issues that he has, he's also notably a character that can see into people. He can see the carnage in people. He can see things in Batman that other people can't see. You know, he's got a sharp mind. He's nuts in some sense, but he's got a read on people, right? So he breaks out of Arkham. Not that that's never happened, right? He breaks out of Arkham, and and it gets talked about, by the way, in this script that I have, which I've made publicly available in a few places. You can find it if you really look. Um, he breaks out of Arkham and he kidnaps this guy. He tracks him down and he kidnaps him. Now, to me, that's cool because one of the best Batman, the animated series episodes of all time, was when the Joker stalked someone, said that the guy was like his hobby, that had flipped him off he cut him off and flipped him off in traffic, and he was a constant torment to this dude that had to go like in the witness protection program or whatever, hiding out from the Joker. I think his name was Charlie or whatever. So as a boy, as a teenager in the 90s, that episode, God bless you whoever wrote that, because that's good writing. That is the Joker that I want to see. That's the Joker that if you write him any other way than this depraved psychopath, not somebody that's jolly and friendly, but like Heath Ledger, like you'd be terrified to be in a dark room with this guy. It's not like the Riddler where he's got to start talking and you kind of figure out and you start thinking, I think this guy's more dangerous the longer he talks. The Joker just puts that out there, maniac. Um, he kidnaps this guy. He's got him held hostage in a building. He's going to torturously kill him, but he wants an audience. So he gets Dr. Harley Quinzel, if she's got the doctor before her name, because it would be a master's or whatnot to be an intern or whatever at that time. He gets Harley Quinzel and he has her watch. And what I talk about in there, and I don't go into an overwhelming amount of detail as to how he killed him, but I say, and this is vile, y'all, but I say that he took his hand and then he stuck it up the guy like he was a puppet. Now, if you know anything about horror movies at all, there's somebody out there that's like, yeah, that is me playing off of killer clowns from outer space. So it's a clown thing. But I thought, what's something jokery that he could do? There are other things that happen in the story. Victor Zsasz is a part of it. You've kind of got multiple things, like a polyrhythm going on, because it starts out with the day when she first met a Joker, and then it's talking about the things that had happened since it. So when she was a little girl, she saw him pick up Victor Zsasz and take him out to some stuff. But all these years later, this little girl who saw this person, Joker, that there she was as a psychologist, and all this stuff happened. You got Victor Zsasz with him and one of his goons, and then another guy that they're forcing to go along and be a goon, which just makes it more diabolical. There's a dude that like owes them a debt. They kill several people. He kills somebody in the street and he puts a smile on his face, with the knife. And they go into this dude's house and they're there to kill him. The one murders the guy's little boy, like a young child that the guy's given a bath in a bathtub in a bubble bath, and he says, "Now you see him," and he takes him by the back of the head and he dunks him under, and then the kid's thrashing around. Now you don't, and he doesn't let off until the kid is dead, because that's the Joker, that you do something in a way that's like it's a joke or whatever, but where it's so sadistic that it's not funny, that it just makes you a psychopath. So that's probably the most like flaggable thing that I have in the story, which makes it awesome, story wise for that, because he's very clearly the bad guy. Um, yeah. So a number of people die in it. I mean, I don't want to like give away like everything and how everybody dies, but like ha 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 gets like written on the walls, and the person that was the forced associate with them. There's certain stuff that happens, and there's some cops that get taken out, and there's fire, and all manner and reckless driving, and just, yeah, it's all kinds of things going on. It's well written. It'd be great for a series. But yeah, so I mean, when I talk about like open submissions, just pitching this out there as an idea, like, hey, what would be cool to do? If you get how I am somebody that's written like actual series of novels, right? You know that like my brain didn't just stop with like writing that, but I mean I could go through like several more issues off the top of my head as to what happens. Um, Here's my thing with Batman, okay? And the take that I took from this, I feel like he's supposed to be scary to the bad guys. You get that, right? If you've seen The Batman and you remember how the intro goes, you remember the movie, and it's showing the shadows and how people are afraid. But it's not just there, right? Because when you go to the Michael Keaton Batman movie, it's the same way. You've got these bad guys, and they're talking about how there's this mysterious shadowy figure, and he he was shot or fell off a building or whatever, and there was a fountain, and all the blood was in the fountain, but the dude's body that was dead was like found on the road, and he's like this kind of boogeyman. And it's like, you write Batman that way. Now, some of you may be saying, well, man, you're such a good writer, maybe you can explain to me how you do that. You write that character like Batman. That's what I kind of did with Zorro Kills, even though I show him some of the time. You write him like you're writing Michael Myers. You understand? Have you seen like the Halloween movies? You write them, you write it through. They're technically not the victims; they're the villains. But you're writing it through their eyes, through their account. What's happening? You're showing them, and you're showing them walk into the other room, and you've got Michael Myers standing there looking through the screen door. Only it's Batman. You get what I'm saying? You have him as the stalking individual. You write him like he's the antagonist and like they're the protagonist, even though they're both the protagonist and the antagonist, which can be done by virtue of who and what they are and what they're doing. But you write him in that sort of way. And so that's the way that I thought, man, that's a Batman that I would really like to see. I've seen a lot of people write cool Batmans. Dan Jurgens did really well. I'd mentioned this to him, and he said, "Look, I'm not allowed to read stuff for characters that I'm going to go ahead and write." Um, that's okay, but that's the kind of Batman thing that I would want to see. And I was going to let's say that was just like done, that everybody went ahead and did that, and pretended that I'm not making a dime off of this, but this is like free PDF. You can get it on Amazon. All that. There's a word for that. Fan fiction. But let's just say that someone that is a writer at my caliber is making fan fiction of this simply out of principle, which you know that I would totally do, because I'm a man of principle. Right. And DC should climb a mountain and swim a lake to hire me, whatever. I don't know how that works. I do know how that works because I'm a Sigma male. I think that people don't get, and I'm saying in everything, I'm saying in church, don't necessarily get hired for merit, but they're a nepo baby, or they're somebody's friend, or whatever. They get hired for obedience, not merely for talent and whatnot, because they're in some kind of a little clique or whatever. And the harshest thing that you could say about that is that one day there's going to be a judgment. Yeah, whatever. It is what it is. Build your own thing, then, BL. Sure, absolutely. I don't look at these big things and say, hey, there's this and that, because look over at Joe Blow over here, Joe Blow over there. I've been told so many times that Kingstone Comics that I need to work, that they should hire me. I mean, like heaven and earth should forcibly make them hire me. They've got who they've got doing it, and they're competent and all that. But presumably, I've not read all their stuff, but they're putting out some stuff, they're doing their thing, they're happy with it. It doesn't matter to me. A lot of times a closed door is a bigger blessing than an open door. There was this dude in the gospel music world that had a publication, I'm not going to say who, that had a publication, and I was like, I just really wish they would hire me. I really wish they would hire me. Oh man, God, Lord Jesus, why won't they hire me, right? And then the dude has me do some stuff for him as a favor. You know what that means? Unpaid. You've had those, right? As a favor, which I'm cool with some things unpaid, but at some point, if there's so much work and so much hassle into something, it needs to be paid. Do you know what needs to be free? Cheap and easy, like easy, like not burdensome. The bigger of a pain something is, the more it should cost. That's my take on it. That's why somebody, because I'm not really rocking and roll. I'm producing all this stuff that's not even out yet. I've not made like 1 red cent off of all these comics that I'm talking about doing. I've got some that people can buy online. They'll hear about the stuff that I've got going on, and they're like, man, that is so cool. I want to support your stuff. It's like, that there's already stuff that you could buy that would in turn help me. That you could just like sit around and play like Bin Jam on Spotify, and that like every quarter that I would rake in some money from that, go on vacation and just have it loop. That I would rake in some money from you playing my music on Spotify, from my music playing on radio, from my music playing on iTunes, all that stuff, that I would make money quarterly. That monthly, that I would make money from you going ahead and buying my books that are on Kindle Unlimited, from you turning pages in my books, that I would make money from that. So, you're not like crowdfunding and throwing something out there that maybe it's going to happen and maybe it's not. And let's be realistic. If you're with it at all, if you have any cognizance, so if I'm doing it, unless I die, more or less, it's going to get done. I have that. I have to finish things that are in front of me, right? But anyway. Yeah, so I wrote that Batman thing. I can go other places in this and all, but I mean, I thought that was good stuff. I was gonna explore it more. I wanted to show more of the dynamic between Victor Zsasz, because I like him, and what all went on with the Joker, about the Joker breaking out, about him doing that stuff. I wanted to deal more with the Harley Quinn stuff, because let's be real, she's the popular character that sells. And if DC said, look, hold the presses, we're doing this book, this is happening, okay? BL Blankenship, we're paying you. God bless you. You don't get up and say stupid stuff online that offends people, and all that type of thing, whatever. Except maybe like, I don't know if anybody's offended by this video, but whatever. I just don't take broad shots at people. The thing, I've had my heart broken in ministry and all that. There's things that I really wish would come about and happen, and I presume that this probably is just gonna like fall on like stony ground or whatever. It doesn't bother me. I sat down, I wrote one thing. There's a lot of people that put out like crazy, stupid, wild content, some stuff that looks good in like AI or whatever. I'm like, you could just go ahead and take this actually well written thing, which, by the way, I can't get AI to do. It doesn't want to put anybody in a straitjacket. It doesn't want to show somebody drowning a child in a bathtub. I mean, what are you to do? Um, but anyway, I was going to go other places with that. Um, I wanted to show Harley Quinzel's childhood in the extreme like religious setting too, while she's being like raped by her uncle. Again, this isn't monetized, so I can say whatever I want to say. I guess. I mean, I don't guess they're going to cut it. Whatever. It doesn't matter if they do. What is it, like an hour or whatnot? I'm just talking. I didn't prepare any of this, but I was going to have her doing all that. Why? Because Batman is kind of modeled like a medieval devil. So her savior, redeemer character, the Joker, that's did all this, that she just feels such for who's going to come to stop him. This character that looks like a medieval devil, to which she can have full on mental breakdown, call him a devil. I was debating in that scene because I'm seeing like things that I haven't written, right? I was debating in that scene, would she hit him with like a ball bat or like a crowbar or like a fire extinguisher or what? But I was going to have all of that go down like in that place where he's like killed the guy or whatever, that would be her take on Batman. She kind of sort of recovers from that. You're kind of getting a story in this Bat Country thing that starts at the beginning and comes to the end and leaves some details out of some chapters in the middle, like I'm Quentin Tarantino. Um, you get certain parts of it, but if I went on with it, I would break those down. What you do get at the end of Bat Country is that all these things have been talked about that have happened to her to whatever length. She's looking at herself in the mirror, and in normality, she looks like Harleen Quinzel. She's the cute blonde, and she's got her glasses on, and she's looking in the mirror, and she's seeing the Harley Quinn in the Batman the Animated Series looking Harley Quinn, outfit, with her face painted and all that. And this other persona of her is talking to her because it's broke her psychologically. The head of the psychiatric department, Dr. Crane, at Arkham, is has put her over the Joker. In spite of this, even though this stuff happened to her several months back, that you can go ahead and handle it. I do not break down in there who Dr. Crane is. Quite frankly, if you don't know, you're not a Batman fan, and at some point it's weird that you don't know that he's a villain, he's a scarecrow, people. But yeah, that you've got bad people that are running Arkham, that are doing stuff. No wonder the inmates are getting out. No wonder that experiments are going on and all kinds of stuff. Really didn't go into a ton of things with that, which I totally could. But my take on the story was to tell that story about Harley Quinzel in a way that it's actually not mindlessly stupid. In a way where it makes sense for somebody to have all of this young trauma and that they try to overcome it, but that she comes into contact with somebody that can see that pain and that can reach back to there, and that can take that and use that as some kind of, as a touchstone, the right wording, that makes him something that she feels like she needs and cannot let go of and cannot walk away from, and causes her to have a dependency on the Joker to the level that comics and animation have portrayed her to, up until the point when she finally left the abuser. So yeah, this probably works well enough. There's other things that I could throw out there for like pitchy stuff that I haven't written. there's people that egg me on to do stuff. I've written a number of people, not Scott Snyder personally. I DM'd him about something the other day, but I've emailed personally a number of big wigs at various comic book companies that I have been given their information by professionals in the industry, like working professionals in the industry, of whom I'm not going to name because it's not important. God bless them, I guess, I'm being like unctioned to do it, and then I'm not getting an answer back, and I'm not hearing back, and that's been a while ago and all that. But no, I have reached out to some people about things, and I have a long list of like writing, and the comic thing keeps building and all that, whatever. But that would be my take on like a Batman thing. It would be super dark. Yeah, I could really do things with the Scarecrow. Or not the Scarecrow. I could, but with the Mad Hatter and all kinds of things like that. I really feel like he's so dark that he would fit with the Batman world. He's a hypnotist that likes little girls. He's a good character that you want to see get the living snot beat out of him by Batman. If not just flat out killed. But he's a good villain. He comes off as creepy, and he has this eccentric nutsness to him, and he is formidable. So I mean, there's a lot of different things, but no, I think that would be cool. If I was going to be typecast by anybody, and I know that people do that, and again, it's because of a lack of vision. It's I don't know how Stephen King could write it. And, wow, I didn't think that BL could write a book like that. Wow, he's did it again. I didn't think he could write anything like that. Wow, he's did it again. I've not hit a wall. I have not hit a wall. I'm sure there's a wall. There's a maybe not. I don't know. Not really hit that wall. The closest thing to was when Zorro Inc. contacted me or replied to me, because somebody told me that it was under trademark, and I had to pull it. I had a conversation with them. I showed them what I had out. They didn't say anything weird at all or not, because he's tracking down child trafficking, pedophiles and stuff in like old California, abusing the Mexican people and all that. My Zorro is actually Mexican, by the way, that I have there. He has to be like a Mexican that could pass for like a white person or an Asian person or whatever. You get that through different stories. It wasn't, but they didn't want like an R-rated Zorro. Whereas my thing with Zorro Kills, which was the title of it, I thought there's characters, villains. They're not jaywalkers, right? Villains that are justifiable to just flat out kill, given the situation, what's going on, everything. And I'm like, how could I make a villain that there would be something criminally, mentally, on every level wrong with someone, terribly wrong? You're going to hell, basically, if you don't think it would be okay for him to kill said villains, right? And I thought they need to be predatory towards little children. They're predatory towards Mexican children. Some the U.S. government or people that work for the U.S. for the union are in part of some of it. There's people that are so oblivious to history. So if you were to talk about the American Civil War, which is a horrible name for it because it's not what a civil war is, but that's there's other names for it, but that's the main name that people use. You also had multiple Indian wars. So the Union was trying to like purge the Native Americans from the earth, while they were saying we would rather murder the entire South than let them break away from us like we did from England. Were there some other factors and things going on? Yes. Historically, did the Emancipation Proclamation free exactly 0 slaves, and it was a thing, to try and keep England from getting involved for the South, and while Lincoln was sending black people to Liberia to their death, and talking about how we don't need mixed races here, and America needs to be a white utopia, and doing seances in the White House, to which his wife was later put in a mental institution over. Yeah, all that was going on. But they were slaughtering Indians, all kinds of things were going on. I just thought, what if you had some of these, dirty Union Indian killer people that are working with these mobster people to traffic Mexican children. In turn, there's somebody that's named in it that's from my books. Mr. Green is what he's called, the father of Oleander Green. Oleander Green is in God Walks the Dark Hills, book number 4. He is very much like a what's his name? Oh man, I'm talking and I'm forgetting his name. The dude with the painting of himself that can't die because he has the painting. Y'all know what I mean. Dorian Gray. He's very much inspired by Dorian Gray. He likes dark-skinned boys. That's his thing. He puts them in cages and everything. But yeah, he's the villain in that he's very flamboyant. And whatnot. But yeah, when I had him walk out, it's a novel. When I have him walk out, it says that he's wearing a periwinkle jacket, because I thought that the color periwinkle sounds effeminate, with a crimson lining. He later walks out with a canary yellow jacket, which I actually like canary yellow. I think it's pretty. But I just think the name periwinkle, not that there's anything wrong with wearing periwinkle blue, in any case, but I just thought it sounds sissy, and I wanted him to have something that sounded, like effeminate, because it's he is, it's the way that he is. He's fancy, but yeah. So no, those were my thoughts for Batman. That's the way that I did Zorro, which was proto Batman-esque. You would not wear all black unless you were planning on like hiding in the shadows, right? That's what would make sense, and that like a whip would come out and you would get people, and he'd say things like stinking American gringos, and all like gritting his teeth and everything. He's very alpha. He's got like the hairy chest, with the lace up shirt and all that. So he's a very manly man. I asked the artist that did that, Zorro and Zorro Kills. I said I want him to be based off of the dude that was on Fantasy Island and that played Khan in Star Trek #2, whatever. You know what his name is. That dude. I said that's who I see as Zorro, because he can act like a normal person, or he can act like the baddest man on the planet, and come off different ways. It's got to be a guy that women would be like, oh, over, but that could be like mean and scary. So that's who my Zorro character that was allegedly Zorro. I wasn't ever really planning on having him. If Zorro Inc. was like, yeah, going ahead and doing this. I wrote the second one, by the way, in good faith, and I guess that's never going to be a thing. I will tell you that if I was making obscene amounts of money in comics just because of like the psychosis about it, would I care to do it as a free book, free for the fans, for the fans? I mean that I would never see a dime on. There's a part of me that's like, I wouldn't care to do that. I would do that for people if they just loved it that much, and if I had the type of stuff coming in, even though there's probably things that I could way better spend money on. But if I was making hand over fist, if I was pulling in money like I someone pulled in, I would do so many things. By the way, as a writer, I want to say this because I hear how competitive, I don't really know how it is, I just know the garbage that people talk about, how competitive it is within like Marvel or DC. As a writer, like in the literary communities, writers don't have some kind of disdain for other writers unless there's something wrong with you. Writers play well with other writers, talk well with other writers, get along well with other writers. They partner with other writers. They put out anthologies with other writers and all that. I've been in plenty of anthologies. those are nice because I feel like they keep you humble, or they keep me humble, because I've read my stuff in anthologies, and I've read other people's stuff in anthologies, and they really kind of go all over the place. Now I've got my own way that's unique to me, that I do certain things that other people wouldn't do, and don't do other certain things that other people wouldn't do. So there's its own flavor to things, but overall the writing, I felt like I kept up swimming with everybody else. Generally speaking, I felt like if we were all in like a competitive swimming pool in our lanes, I felt like everybody more or less was even. There might be somebody that's a little bit ahead here, a little bit ahead there, but there was nobody that was just like really peeling out ahead or lagging behind. So they all worked. They all worked well. The way that happened, incidentally, with the prose stuff that I would write is I'd be contacted by the people. I would be greenlit. By the way, I prefer to do that. I prefer to just like greenlight people. I don't like this whole audition thing. You either got it or you don't, right? Um, I'd be greenlit by the people. I would be told this is about how many words it needs to be, because that's what you do in prose. Like if it was a comic book, they would say this is how many pages your story's going to be. And by the way, I write short form comics well. That's something a lot of people don't do. I could talk a little bit about that. I mean, I it's sad. There's a method to it, okay? Um, but I was told, it's going to be about this many words, and here's the things that you can't do. You're not going to kill children, for example. You're not going to kill any animals, or they'll say things like, "I want this to be rated, PG, PG-13, whatnot." Don't use any racial slurs, whatever. People would say, "Here's what it's going to be. Here, here are the borders. Here's the fence that I'm putting you in, and you can play in this playpen, but this is the box that you're in, and anything within this is okay, and anything that's not is not." And you just do it. From there, that's easy stuff. I want this to be a G-rated story. Do it. But it's like, do whatever you want to do. It's like, what kind of book is this? Tell me, and I'll make it fit. Then, because you don't want something that like knee jerks all over the place. I did music albums like that before, by the way. I don't think it's good. I think the flow of something is better if it's all like country or metal or quartet or whatever. I don't think that you want something at this extreme and then this polar extreme. I think that that's really bad within the same album. Um, Let it be its own album. Let it be its own thing if it's going to be that way. Anyway, I've made some videos that have really popped, and I've made some that maybe they don't, and I don't know. I don't know if it's just people sharing them or whatever. I just kind of wondered how open people would be to the concept of, if I was writing this is what I would do, kind of stuff. A thing that's been on my mind with that, and how long have I been talking here? I'm almost an hour and 30 minutes in. I'll tell you what it is, and then I'm going to shut up. A thing that I have thought about is Jonah Hex. If Scott Snyder said BL, again, not holding my breath. And I love Scott Snyder, and that has nothing to do with it. Love the guy. Super nice guy. He's a good writer in his own right. Man can write. Many good things to say about him. There's people that want to cause all kinds of heat online or whatever. This is America. If Scott Snyder believes like you, doesn't believe like you about this thing, that thing, whatever, can I tell you something? He's a real professional, and he treats people well, and he knows how to act. Okay. So I mean, all that stuff doesn't matter. You can hold a sign at one thing, somebody else can hold a sign at another thing, and that's okay. I'm not going to touch on anything anymore. I don't care if somebody thinks different than me. That doesn't make them my enemy. Even if they're wrong, that doesn't make them my enemy, and vice versa, which is always the case. Um, I uh, I have very certain thoughts to what I would do if Scott Snyder would say, Ben, I want you to write an absolute Jonah Hex. I mean, I could go full on, but I mean, I could write a 3-book, 4-book story easily. I know Jonah Hex. I know how Jonah Hex is. I know how the American Civil War is. That being said, um, the absolute universe is not that. So it would um, allow one to play with an alternate history, and I could do very dark, graphic, dynamic things that are juxtaposed to how the normal Jonah Hex stuff goes, but that would be, I feel like, really good storytelling. Um, it would be a really dark, gritty, graphic western. Um, if I did that, or as dark and gritty and all as DC would allow me to do. But I would want, if they said we're giving you the keys, BL, because it's absolute universe, whatever it, I mean, and it's in a different time period than other stuff. So as long as it doesn't mess with things, darkness rules and whatnot, um, I I could do some really good stuff with it, and I could do it in such a way that I could leave it to where somebody else could pick up the ball. I wouldn't kill him off in the end. I would leave it in a place to where if someone wanted to continue, they could, or it could just be a standalone based on demand. Um, but yeah, I've talked to a lot of Western authors, and everything. Some Western comic book writers, all that. I mean, I've had the I've had some conversations with some people from the Johnstone, type Western stuff. There's a director that's over in Europe that's made like my favorite Western horror movie. The name of it's Brimstone. It has Dakota Fanning in it. Um, and he was super nice to me and said, send me your literary stuff. I want to read it and I might do something with it. Again, I've had a lot of close calls and I don't get like super wildly, enthused about stuff because I think that most doors are going to shut or whatever, because I think that most people are going to fail you, forsake you. They're not going to show up. They're going to say that they love you to your face, but they're not going to love you with their deeds and with truth, which is what the Bible says that you're actually supposed to do and condemns you otherwise. To not just love in words alone, but with deed and with truth. I love you. Act like it. that's what it's saying. But yeah, I have all kinds of things that would be wonderful for the Jonah Hex stuff. And if you want to hear about it, I totally don't mind to just that up. But I wondered, if people would be like, if I was going to write this is what I would do. I don't know. Maybe you could pull some other people on. I don't know. I can monologue fairly well, which you would assume because I'm a preacher. I have the gift of gab. It was difficult at first, but you just kind of get over that. Anyway, hopefully this has been dramatically more structured than most people's mindless rantings online where they don't stay on a consistent subject or have any kind of aspect of where they're trying to get to or where they've been while they're talking. I hope you all haven't just been like sitting here, like listening to this or like watching this the whole time or whatever. I'm not that pretty. I hurt my wrist repeatedly. If you are watching this, I slid hauling the garbage out to the road, and it's always my right wrist, the hand that I draw with. I'm a graphic artist at work. I got a mouse in my hand. But my palm goes down and it was just like on my wrist again. That's happened several times. I went to a watch night service and slammed it down on concrete, going to Jeremiah Yoakum's church up there in Kentucky, all kinds of things. Um, I'm recovering well from the severe sunburn that I got from going to meet Scott Snyder on Free Comic Book Day. Um, didn't know that it was going to be full sun. I was in it for about 4 hours straight. I only burned on my face and head and all because I was wearing a long sleeve jacket. I just had no hat on. If I would have had a hat on, that would have been like my saving grace. Now, forget even sunscreen. If I would have just had a hat on, that would have helped me dramatically. I have peeling skin all over my head right now. Um, but yeah, the swelling and everything's went down. God's good to me. Scott Snyder doesn't do anything for needed to do anything for me for not being with it in that capacity. But again, super nice guy. It was great meeting him. He's so hospitable and nice. I like him a lot. You can learn more about writing scripts and everything by his website. Things like that make me paranoid because I was told you're just such an outstanding drummer, and I'm really good at timing. That's my thing. I'm with it on timing. I'm not like the best person, but there's a lot of incompetent drummers, and I'm not. I just roll with it. I just kind of blend with what people are doing. I'm a minimalist. It's like you're such a good drummer. It would really help you to do music theory. I'm just telling you why this stresses me out, right? So I get this book, Music Theory for Dummies, by the way. I get this book and I start reading it. And it's like, you know how you breathe naturally and how you blink naturally, right? Imagine if you had something go on, something nuts go on, to where you're having to think about when you breathe, where you're having to think about how you blink. That's how music theory is for me. It took me months to recover, months to stay, months for that. I'll say gobbledygook because that's what it was to me, to get it out of my head because it was wrecking me. And that freaks me out about people saying, well, this is the way that you do stuff. Okay. So, bottom line, you look at what I've done in comics and all that. Am I writing it the way that other people are writing it? 100%. I'm sure I'm not doing things the same way that Scott or Gail Simone or whoever is doing it. But it's like, would this mess me up? Because it's like I'm already doing it. It's like I just get up on stage and and there are people that are like, wow, you're so good at that. There are people that have came up to me and told me, you are my favorite author, which is, by the way, really nice. You're my favorite author that I've ever read, whatever. So I'm already bringing it. I'm just doing it the way that I'm doing it. I'm getting it done. It's like a lot of painters, you know. You got a Picasso and you've got a Rembrandt and you've got a Monet and you've got a Bob Ross and you got all these people that do all these different applications and Norman Rockwell and all that. And all of them have a fandom and all of them are notably artists, right? But they're not all doing things the same way. Um, I'm just being me. And I do stylistically write things different. I'm an artist first. I was an artist first. I've always been an artist first. I learned to draw before I had written a book or whatever. So I do think in pictures. The way that I think, I have things visualized in my head. That's how I write stories. I see it. You know, how do you choreograph this fight scene? Because I see it. I see the person draws the gun and this guy steps over this way and that person is doing that and that one hits this person and the trajectory of the bullet and all that. I'm in the room with them. You know, I think, how would somebody react to this? I'm a good arguer. And by that, what I mean is not just that I have a bunch of information, but if we were having a conversation, and I don't like to argue, I don't like to waste my words. I know I'm bleh with this, but it's like you don't want to talk to a wall. I mean, you're not going to change a person's mind, so why bother? You know, let them be wrong. Um, you know, if I'm talking to somebody and we're having a conversation in my head, this isn't like a thing that I manually make myself do. This is the way that I am. Like it's a chess game and there's multiple places they can move on the board. I have all these scenarios of what they're going to say and what I'm going to say and little subtle stuff that some people wouldn't pick up on, a dig, a jab, whatever. I'll get that a lot of times, particularly if I know the person well. Um, but there's a lot that's going on inside of me. A thing about being like a Sigma male, that if you watch videos on it, what you say to somebody, I'm a Sigma male or whatever, and you say that with the thinking that someone out there isn't stupid and they're going to take the time to look it up or look into that if they care at all. I don't care if you do, if they care at all. But when I'm having a conversation with you, I'm not just having a conversation with you. It's like I'm standing over here watching myself and watching you and criticizing the whole thing. That's really the way that my brain works. So stuff's exhausting, right? But I've got all that going on. That's why what I think makes somebody like good at arguing and debating, because you're not like reacting. You're already there. You're already, if they do this, I'm going to do this, and if I do this, they'll do this. So I could do that, or it could be that way. And you get all these variables, not to the capacity that AI could, I'm sure, but to the capacity that I can. Anyway, that's the way that I went at an angle for a Batman thing. I just call this open submission. Um, you know, I mean, I know this isn't just like, hey, pitching something to DC. I know that you're supposed to throw out like two lines there, because they don't want to hear all this bleh. And then you give a paragraph and everything. If stuff is based on merit, and it's not always, sometimes, but if it's based on merit, right? If it was truly based on that, you'd look at B.O. Blankenship, and you would say, let's look at what this guy's did and what he's did like well in whatever capacity, and you just roll with it. Now, Scott, and I did this because it's me, because I'm a nice guy. There's absolutely zero strings to this. Scott Snyder, I wanted Victoria to make some candy, and she was so busy that she didn't have any peanut brittle because I was going to feed him while I was there. But when I finally got in there to him, I handed him a bag and I said, hey, I said, I've got a gift for you. And again, this wasn't like a sales pitch or anything. This is just because this is the way that I am, which could also be classified as like not normal, because, it doesn't matter to me. I just, I like the guy fine. But I gave him 2 comic books that I had written. One of them is Cat and Mouse #1, which is like a kid-friendly, like a children's book that I would write. Another one was the Larry Bogus one. Now, I do have another book. I give people things that I think or hope that they might enjoy. It's my dad financed that book. It's about him and my mom and all that. It's written more like comic strip-esque. It's rough. It's rough in ways to me that other people would think this is good comedy and all that, but it's painful for me to write, just like the Screw Tape Letters was painful for C.S. Lewis to write, if that makes sense to you. But I handed him that one too. So both of those are more like on the comedic side, different kinds of comedy. And then I handed him 2 novellas. One of them was my changed Josie Wells Rides Again, which I cannot sell. I had to change it to Jody Walls Rides Again, because that character, despite what the internet told me when I made it, so that and Zorro, it's happened kind of twice, is copywritten. That was with an enormous amount of research to the character, an extreme amount of love. It would make a perfect movie that would make so much money that it would be insane. It would also be a good thing for Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood in mind as an old man. It's an old man Josie Wells type movie. It's written like a slow burn, and a thing that I had processed in my mind when I wrote it. What is the name of that? Don't Breathe is the name of that, where these kids think that they can mess with this old man, but he's the baddest man on the planet. That's the angle that I went with Jody Walls is what the thing is for sale. Rides Again, but Josie Wells Rides Again. Do I have more Josie Wells Rides Again books that I haven't managed to give out? Because I give them out for free when I set up books at stuff, which has been a while and rarely, right? Yeah, I've got some more. If there's speculator, whatever people, would that make them worth more money? Absolutely, unquestionably, but I can't sell them. But I went ahead, I gave him Josie Wells Rides Again, which would make the perfect sequel to what would then be a trilogy of books. Both books are great. The first movie is great. The second movie dropped the ball hard. It needs to be remade. In a perfect world where that would have been accepted and Clint Eastwood would have turned around and made the movie, and everybody would have stood up and clapped and all that, then I would have wrote a midquel that would have went in between the second, the last, Josie Wells book by the original person and that one. which would have had him in the outlaw years, robbing banks and everything, which I would think that Clint Eastwood's son could then play, because you got a franchise then, people. You've got to think about this. If Warner Brothers Paramount people are listening to this, um, there may be a voice in the room that's like, for the love of God, hire B.L. Blankenship, and you should listen to that voice, but whatever. But yeah, I thought that would be really, really good, really beautiful. The story has a lot of stuff to it. There's a bunch of historical things, just moderately adapted. Whatever. But yeah, um, you know, um, I don't know. I think. Oh, the other thing that I gave him is I gave him the novella where I pushed the envelope with more than any novella that I had ever written. It's absolutely vile. If you really like over the top, extreme splatter western type, why would someone like B.L. Blankenship write this to show that I could? Stuff. The Confederado. My wife absolutely hates that book. There's absolutely horrible things that are in it. There are no truly good characters overall in it. I thought, what if there was a place, like how The Exorcist did, how they had this foreign, like demon, pagan god thing, because where it's foreign to you, it freaks you out, right? Because it's the things that you don't know that scare you, that you don't understand that scare you. I'm like, what if I had it where there was like this place that it's like a shadow, that it's like that God doesn't see, even though, um, so make as godless of a place as I can. And geographically, where I decided to make that, just because I think people are oblivious to it and all that, is Oaxaca. So I have it in Oaxaca, which of course there's a cheese named after. But I did it because of the landscape, because of the cloud forests and all that type of thing that went on. And I talked about how the Diablo game series, the first one, the way that it feels like when you enter into the world of Sanctuary, and then games like what is it? The Village, is that Resident Evil? What is that? You know what I mean. But stuff like that where you feel like you're in this foreign place. I have it like that. I've got this Confederate soldier. It's totally disparaging all the way through. The book that inspired me to write a book like that is Blood Meridian, um, by Cormac McCarthy. So yeah, it's that edgy. It over describes things in a way that's poetic, but every single time they're filled with misery and disparaging, and it's written to be that way. Whereas in Jody Wells, uh, yeah, Josie Wells Rides Again, or Jody Walls Rides Again, the story that you're taken through is through the eyes of an innocent child who later gets roped into something and meets Josie Wells, who, this boy from Chicago, the outskirts of Chicago, had studied for like book report stuff and all that, and thought that he was an interesting outlaw and everything. So he's aware of who he is. So you've got like a coming of age, innocent type things there. So they're two different tones. So if Scott Snyder, if he was reading those, and that's not the reason why I did for him to hire me for anything or whatever, but I mean that shows broad how I can write. There's this artist, C. Derek Miller, and he's super super nice guy, by the way. He's never been anything but good to me. I like him a lot. But he told me, he said, "Do you know what the best thing about you as a writer is, BL?" He said, "There's so many of these people that can write these stories, but they can only write one way, and you have the ability to write so many different ways." And that is true. I do. I can write children's books. I can write Dr. Seuss poems. I can write tender love stories. I can write theological, I mean, like things that you'd sell on Christian television stuff. I can write brutal, intense, true crime, horror stuff. I can write this demonic, bleh, horror stuff. I can write in a way that it seems sincere, that people have even said that there's like some kind of power or anointing to just, got what God's given me. So no, there's a lot of stuff there. I used to want to be a cop, criminal profiler. I would get into that. I was interested in psychology, of course, with the ministry stuff, all the theology stuff, where I've written all the Western stuff. That means that I've studied the 1800s America, but beyond that, like around the world, because there's other stuff going on than in North America. Through that time. So I just, I take what I know. And if I don't know, I research it. I think that you just need to be able to write about stuff well enough to fake it and sound like you know what you're talking about, even if you don't. There's a graphic novel, I guess that's what it'll be. It might be a semi-annual, whatever it's going to be called, comic that I'm kind of beginning to let percolate and everything in my head right now. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm studying for that. I did reach out to two different deliverance ministers, John Ramirez, who I like a lot, and Dr. Bob Larson, who was like my teenage hero. And, said I'd like to have conversations with them just to kind of get some of their takes and insights from that. Do I expect to hear back from them? No. I expect most people to fail or forsake me. I expect most people to sit down when they should stand up. So when you have people that want to attack some big label or a Scott Snyder or whoever because they're a big will or whatever, I kind of think that happens on a lot of levels, and if I'm not having the door opened over here, then why am I going to have this person who genuinely seems like a nice person do it over there? If DC hired me, I would kind of wonder if they were just being nice, or whatever, not even just because I can bring it, because I don't know that that's the reason that people do it. I think people do it because somebody's their buddy. And my wife says about me, because she's talked about me like when I was younger, and she's like, "You're just so good looking," and I'm like, I said I would get rejected so much by girls. I get like so tore up and everything. And she said, I think a lot of that is because you're like this wide, like your palate is. It's huge, and most people's like that. And they don't know how to take you when you bring this immense broadness and vastness to something, and they're just, they're just like that. They're like riding around on like the edge of a quarter. And you've got an Olympic-sized swimming pool that you're playing in, whatever. But no. Anyway, if y'all would be interested in that, or if I've not bored you or whatever, shout out, say what you want to say. I don't know. I beat myself up. I question myself. I think all kinds of stuff all the time. What can I do? And I just don't like to waste my time. I put this out here for you. This isn't some big thing off of me. We're running into almost 2 hours now. I just need to shut up. But I'm wearing my Get In Heathens, We're Going to Church shirt, by the way. That's a Christian rock Pentecostal rebellion shirt. I wrote all the songs for that novelty, parody, fictitious band and all that. So it's really rockabilly, but it's like from a churchy angle. It's about the hot girl shouting around the church, and all that. It's like 1950s rock and roll sound. And listen to that online. I get money when you do. But yeah. Hey, anyway, I appreciate you. Thank you to y'all that have listened to the end or enjoyed this, maybe clipped this, found some kind of entertainment, whatever. I don't flag people. I'm not the quartering. That'll get the shutdown right here and there. But I don't care. Bad advertisement is good advertisement to people in the horror community, whatever. I'm kind of in a place where I don't really feel like I have a lot to lose. Life and things were. It is what it is. But yeah, what not? Anyway, that's my first maybe my last open submission stuff. If you all want to hear, what would you do if you were writing an absolute Jonah Hex? Because if you know me, I like Jonah Hex. Wesley Dodds Sandman and Phantom Stranger are the two DC characters that I have a lot of stuff for, that I go back for. I do like certain Batman universe stuff. It's all violent. But yeah, I like that stuff as well. Marvel Punisher is a favorite. I like their noir universe. I think that's got some nice stuff to it, and all that. Again, I've not really hit any walls, but if it's like, what do I like? I like pulp, noir, horror, true crime, westerns. I like stuff like that, if that makes any sense at all. So I mean, hey, even though there's some superhero comics and all of the stuff that really like resonates with me, it's not really like that. It's more like Death Wish. It's more like I spit on your grave. Um, it's more like Pulp Fiction, Seven, Frailty, Red Dragon. I'm naming off movies, TV shows like Dexter, Breaking Bad. If you were to say like things that I think, man, that's really well written, Hannibal Rising. Um, what's that thing called? Was it Deadly Animals, where the serial killer's feeding people to sharks and all that? Honestly, that kind of reminded me of Silence of the Lambs a little bit. It is that good. The movie that people said was like Silence of the Lambs, that was an utter disappointment, was Long Legs. That movie's trash and shouldn't have even been made. It's such like brain rot garbage. I think that whoever said that it is like the next generation Silence of the Lambs, they need to be sat down for a while. There needs to be some serious accountability. That's what caused me to go to see that movie. It was really that bad of trash. I thought that the last Evil Dead movie, Evil Dead Rise, was one of the best ones that they have in the franchise. I mean, it's different, but it was done very well, and it totally like flowed with all the over the top stuff that they do. I like the Conjuring series. I particularly like the last one. Thank you for saying Jesus several times, which is said an immensity of times in real life exorcisms. I like Insidious series. Okay. It has some good points to it. I like that. I know they're bringing back like that psychic woman and all that to it, which that's it's devilly stuff or whatever. I mean, I could go on, but the stories are fine. The thing that got me the most about the first one, first off, it did something you didn't expect it to do. And then I liked the black bride that was stalking the guy, and just them showing the pictures of her getting closer by proximity. I say her, it's a serial killer man that dresses up like the black bride, that committed suicide, so his spirit could stalk after the main dude. But you get more of that in the other movies too, because at the end of the first one, the guy becomes possessed by this thing that's from that is in the other world, where there's certain people that kind of astral project into it, and the longer they're there, the more these dead creepy things want to inhabit their body and get a grip on them. But I thought that was good creepy stuff. I didn't really care for the red dude at all. It didn't do it for me. The best villain of the series was that black bride character, who gets brought in to a few other movies in it, but that was my favorite for there. The Conjuring, if I had control of the Conjuring stuff, whichever movie studio that is, there absolutely would be a Crooked Man movie. He was a standout character in number two. I did like both Nun movies. I have liked all of the Conjuring movies. I thought all of the Annabelle movies were fine. That's where I stand at that. Anyway, this has been like way less long of a rant than some of these people that I call their stuff brain rot scheme, bleh, screams. So, whatever. Okay. Anyway, that's me talking about comic books and just throwing things out there in stories, seeing if you all think it would be interesting or whatnot. This video can just sit and do absolutely nothing, get clipped apart, whatever. I don't care to talk about different things that people want to hear, to go on people's shows, whatever. I can't stand these streams that have no structure, that it's just people that constantly try to say something cool. Have a topic, get into the topic, and stick to the topic. And if you're going to say something that's not part of the topic, it needs to some way, somehow, some shape, some form make sense. Bill out.